we demand every other type of justice. And I think everybody who came here tonight can help us do that. So Eva started an organization called Black on Black Education. She'll tell you a little bit about it.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Evalaurene Jean Charles. Most people just call me Eva, and I'm the founder of Black on Black Education. I just graduated 2 weeks ago from John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and thank you. And I started Black on Black Education because I was tired of the phrase Black on Black crime being the only relevant phrase that brought Black folks together and articulated the relationship that we all have with each other. And so we're here today to bring a bunch of beautiful Black folks together and allies together to have an incredible conversation about what it would look like to create a super school, to create a school that is committed to students, that has the most marginalized students able to receive the education that they deserve. And so the folks that are gonna help us with that are our beautiful and incredible panel who so graciously said yes when we called on them. And so we're gonna allow each of them the opportunity to introduce themselves to you so you get just a gist of how incredible these people are and the incredible work that they're doing out in the world. And then you're just gonna know that you're gonna get some amazing information tonight because they are just, they every time I talk to them, I feel empowered. I feel like I got more. I feel smarter. I feel like I can go on and do what it is that I need to do for my people. And so I am just more than grateful for everybody who's on this panel. And so let's get started.
First person we see here is Miss Claudine Miles.
All right.
If you can do a quick introduction of yourself and let us know why you decided to join us.
Absolutely. So, hey, everyone, my name is Claudine Miles. I am originally from Rhode Island, but I have done most of my educational work here in Atlanta. And I was originally a 6th grade science teacher, worked my way up over time to becoming assistant principal, and had the privilege of working in the Southwest Atlanta community. So it's a space that is near and dear to my heart. I believe that our students need more representation. So teachers that look like us, leaders that look like us. And I was able to build a staff that was so reflective of the kids that it nurtured. And so that is work that I'm really proud of. I was over the discipline model there as the Dean of Restorative Practices, as well as managed the science department. And in 2018, I decided it was time to make a little more noise for some more babies. And I've launched Restore More with my partner, Kimberly. And so we really focus on training schools, leaders, and teachers on anti-racist work, restorative practices, and social emotional learning, because we really feel like that is a blockage that is preventing our kids from being most successful. So I am honored to be here tonight. I am so excited to see all of these eyeballs. I'm like, that's the most people I've done seen in months. This is dope. So I am just eager to start the conversation where we're allowed to dream without limits. You know, if money wasn't an option, if staffing wasn't a barrier, what could our schools look like for children? So thank you all for having me. I'm gonna stop rambling.
Not a ramble at all. Chelsea, do you wanna go next?
Sure, I can go next. Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea. I'll kind of just like give a brief overview of like kind of some of the things that I've been able to do and then why I'm here today. So I'm currently a PhD student at St. Louis University. I'm studying education policy and equity because I believe in systemic changes. I am the former vice president of the Board of Education in University City. If you're familiar with Nellie, that's where Nellie went to school. Fun fact. I taught 1st and 2nd grade, and then a 2nd grade split between 2014 and 2017, right before I ran for office. And I did that by way of Teach for America, so a little untraditional way of getting to the teaching profession. And I received my master's degree while I was doing that in elementary education. So I really believe in early intervention, which is why I ended up starting Financial Friends Foundation, which is a nonprofit that believes in building wealth and income for elementary students. So we teach students about financial capacity, that's financial literacy, as well as the application of financial lessons. And what I really like about how the program is designed is that each child going through the program is able to have a real lesson with money, real money that they're able to use. One of the ways that I was able to understand financial lessons was through experience. And so we start with, like I said, the babies and stop in 5th or 6th grade. I'm also an author. I wrote Savannah's Savings Jar. And I'm like, what else did I do? I wrote Savannah's Savings Jar. It's for kids 3rd through 5th grade. I wrote that while I was teaching. And that's, again, is because of the belief in early intervention. And what I come to this space because, just like Claudine said, if we could think without limitations, what would I like for the Black community to be able to have resource through education? It's the bridge and merge between economics and education. I feel like a lot of our problems stem from economics as well as education. So if we could find a soft spot of intersection between the two of those, we can build our community in many different ways across those two sectors. I also started Black Education Agenda because I believe in this idea of the Black community coming together to figure out what is it that we want for our community, what is it that we see for ourselves, the direction that we want to be going into. And so having conversations just like this are all about, is what I'm about at this point. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and to answer questions and to hear from the panelists as well.
Very next.
We were on mute.
My bad. Technology, I'm old. Anyway, Sharif is going to introduce himself. We love having Sharif here. He was actually the first podcast guest that Eva and I interviewed together, and it almost brought a tear to my eye. Go ahead, Sharif.
No, I feel you. I love your dynamic. It's hilarious, but also reminds me of my own. My own daughters, and if I tried to do a show with them, I would be getting elbowed all day. I totally understand. But again, Sharif El-Mekki from West Philadelphia. Right now, I am the Center for Black Educators Development CEO, and this organization really looks at recruiting Black educators and Latinx educators, but trying to provide PD, professional development, for all, anyone who's in front of marginalized students, particularly Black and Latinx. We advocate for policies to support diversity as well as well-prepared, learner-ready educators. And then we try to uplift pedagogy that's been a big part of the Black community for a really long time, both within schools as well as adjacent to schools and school systems. Quarter century ago, I started as a non-traditional path to teaching, and I taught for across this 26 years, and was the last 16 as a principal, all in schools in West and Southwest Philadelphia, and just thoroughly enjoyed it. And also really did a lot of work focusing on Black male educators and a group of brothers in Philly who were really wanted to just support Black men who were in education across the country. Is only 2% of the 3 million plus public school teachers are Black men. And if you take out the PE, physical education, and music teachers, then that number drops even further than 2%. So why I'm here, was excited about that you all were talking about reimagining education. I think too many people talk about reform. I have a friend who, Chris Stewart, who talk about we wouldn't give anybody, not that there weren't people talking about this, but we wouldn't give them any play if they were talking about, well, let's reform slavery. Let's not just end it, let's reform it. And for many of our students, they would be hell-bent to reimagine it the way that you're talking about, and not reform the experiences that they're having for generations. And I think the second piece, just thinking about, starting a school, starting fresh, having this super school, that it's student-centered. And we know that across the country, most of the students are students of color. However, the vast majority of people who write curriculum, implement policy, lead districts and schools are white. And so there's a disconnect. So what would it look like if, and it wasn't built for Black children anyway. So what would it look like if it was being built for Black children, and the people that were imagining the curriculum and policies and pedagogy look like the students that are being served. So thanks again for organizing this and for inviting me.
Thanks for being here. We're so excited to hear what you have to say and what you have to share, a part of this conversation. So next panelist is Rakim Jenkins.
Hi, everyone hear me? You know, I don't want a Teddy Riley situation going on, no verses. I was like, no. My name is Rakim Jenkins. My friends call me Amalu. Amalu means if you do not try, you will not succeed. I got that name through the African rites of passage of Ndu and Nzinga that is based on self-mastery for community transformation. I am a teacher in the Bronx, South Bronx at that, BX stand up, by way of Brownsville, Brooklyn. Brownsville, never ran, never will. And I love teaching. I've been teaching for the last 6 years through way of Teach for America. And in my experience, I started at middle school at first, 5th grade for 3 years. I was a girls basketball coach. I was an assistant dean. I was a grade level lead. Like, I've held every position in the middle school because I felt like I needed to do what I can do to be best for students. I then went to now teach at high school in South Bronx Community Charter High School, which is based off of project-based learning, restorative justice. And I just received a certification from UPenn, project-based learning program, which was amazing and phenomenal. And I believe that students should be in the driver's seat of their education, right? When I'm in the classroom, I'm always asking students, what can we do to make this class the best class ever, right? And I think that any teacher's role inside of the classroom is to teach for liberation, right? If you're not teaching for liberation, then you're not doing it right. And I really want to push teachers specifically and build with students to liberate and to be abolitionists in their classrooms and their school buildings. So I'm excited about this conversation. I've been thinking about innovative schools for a while. I plan to open my own school one day. So I'm excited for this conversation, and thank you. Thank you for hosting. Thank you for Black on Black education, and thank you for everyone who came. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man. Next up, we got Mr. Joseph Roberts, another former podcast guest. Everybody here is former podcast guests. We had an incredible conversation with Joseph, or I did, by the way. But Joseph, tell him why you're here.
All right, I'm old too. Forgive me. My name is Joseph Roberts. I'm a teacher. I've been an educator, I guess, now for about 17 years. I did have a slight break there. I taught math, and I had a slight break there for about 3 years. I was the program director for a nonprofit that fed starving children in Africa and Haiti and around the world. And so we helped fundraise for a few years, and then we took a group of college students over to Zambia, Africa, and spent 5.5 weeks over there and built an AIDS center and fed and did some ministry work there as well. So before that I taught, and then after that I've been teaching as well. A mix between middle school and high school, been in the classroom, and then just recently now I have shifted over to the alternative school. I shifted because I wanted to focus on those I felt needed the most help. A part of my passion and desire to be a part of the, as Sharif mentioned earlier, I guess probably the 0.5% of Black men that's left that are not coaches or in PE or whatever, comes from my particular story. And my parents had a tough time coming up. My mother has been abused in every way possible, literally. And my father struggled with drug addiction for 25, 30 years of my life. and eventually ended up being strung out on crack cocaine. And so because of the upbringing that I had, it gave me a passion to try and look back and see who else I could help. And so that's led me down many paths and lots of research and test and trial in the classroom to be the best I can be to provide for those students who are going through things like I was going through at home. And I recognize that education is far more than the academics that we see just in the building, that it's the whole person. And you can have the brightest and best, and I literally know of a story of one of the brightest and best, full ride to MIT, and ended up committing suicide because there were other aspects of his life that were not together. So you know, being able to have a discussion today that talks about all the pieces that will come together to help make sure that our children come out as whole children, and they can then go out and impact society like we hope we do. And especially in these times, like we need children who are emotionally balanced, clear on what their goals are, clear on who they are, and able to speak up for themselves in these times. So that's a little bit about my background. I do some speaking. Once again, trying to get the message out there to reach as many people as possible, because that's my passion. And I also am a radio host for local hip hop station. We have a program on there for cleaning Christian hip hop. So I do that as well, and volunteer for some other organizations. One thing I'm especially proud of right now is that I'm volunteering for a nonprofit organization in the same community where my father used to purchase the crack during his days. And so I'm excited to be a part of that, and to hopefully to be a part of the change. Now it's a small change, but I think all changes are small, and together, coming together like we are here today, and like we've been coming together around the country, is how we can begin to make a difference. So I'm proud about that, and that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you definitely for sharing that. And we're going to circle back to some of the things that you mentioned there, because it's super imperative to talk about how we help kids that have similar stories to you. So the next person we will introduce, I know she loves focusing on Black educators as well, is Miss Micia Mosely.
Hi, everyone. Good to see all of these beautiful faces. My name is Micia Mosely. I am the founder and director of the Black Teacher Project. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. Shout out Flatbush. I will name that I'm currently in Oakland, California. And I think that for me, the perspective of growing up in New York and having my teaching career in California has helped me understand not only the diversity of Blackness, but how people can speak about reform, how people can speak about transformation, and speak even about reimagining, and use really wonderful, complex language. You know, New Yorkers like, get it done, do it. But sometimes we're not always reflecting because we're busy doing. And then sometimes in California, we're reflecting and it takes a while to get it done. And so I'm really excited that one of the things that sheltering in place is allowing us to do is to bridge that behavior and that consciousness. My time in high school is what brought me here. I went to Brooklyn Tech, which at the time was one of the more racially diverse high schools in New York, 33% Black, 33% Asian, and a mix of a lot of other races. That's not the case today, but I learned about Black academic excellence in a multiracial environment at a young age. So I know for those of us who were in multiracial environments, I know what's possible. And part of what brings me here is wanting us to be able to bring Black excellence wherever we go, whether we're in racial affinity or not. The Black Teacher Project, recently we've shifted our mission. We used to be about really supporting more Black people to get into education, and then we realized that numbers are not enough. And so we wanted to move simply from representation to shifting power. So we've focused our mission now on really focusing on Black teacher leadership and having Black teachers lead and reimagine schools as communities of liberated learning. So much of what the other panelists have said by way of their introduction, I think is aligned. And part of why I'm here is to support our shared understanding of even what we mean by liberation, what we mean when we talk about reimagining in the 21st century. So really happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. And so last but not least, you guys might be like, wait, I thought that was everybody. We started putting this together and then realized, how are we going to talk about reimagining school without bringing in the voice of a student, bringing in the voice of somebody who is experiencing education right now? And so I am more than excited to introduce Sinai Clark, a young lady who I have babysat since she was, she'll tell you how old. And I'm just so proud of her. And so Sinai, please introduce yourself to folks.
Hi, my name is Sinai Clark. I'm from New York. I currently go to Valhalla Middle School. It's predominantly white, so you don't see a lot of kids that look like me. There's only maybe about 5 Black kids in my grade, but it's kind of a mix of everything else, I guess, too. At our school, there are events that occur that are not appropriate at all, and they need to be addressed, but they never are addressed. So my friend and I are the founders of an organization called the Social Justice League, which we started because we need to establish the problems that occur in our school time and time again, but nothing's said about it, because every time you say something about it, apparently the teachers didn't see it, or they think, oh, you're just kidding, or other stuff like that, which is irrelevant. But and I just think that it's important that all children of color are aware of the world around them and are aware of how to react to certain situations. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Sinai. I almost cried a little bit. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. But her voice will definitely come back throughout this conversation. And so I'll leave it to you to kick us off with our questions for the panel.
So I'm gonna ask a really, really, really original question to get things started. Like, it's gonna be so original. It really is just gonna start with the idea that if you guys had a magic wand and you were able to sprinkle some, pixie dust onto a school. We're going to focus on a school, you know what I mean? Because the system is so big and large. We're going to focus on a specific school that we all start together. What would be the most important, 1 to 3 things for us to bring to said school? And let's go in the opposite direction, and let's ask Sinai to start off with what would be the perfect school for you, Sinai?
For me, first it would start with the staff. The staff would definitely have to be diverse. The staff would also have to be able to know how to teach, and what I mean by that is they have to be able to engage the class and make the class want to learn, because currently I have teachers where I'm sitting in class and I'm just like, okay. And, you don't want the class to be boring, and you want it to be exciting and intriguing, and you want to be engaged. Another thing is the students. I feel like the students that go to the school need to understand how to say things correctly, I guess. What I mean is like how to properly address a situation and how to solve it, instead of just coming to a teacher, because in the real world, you're not going to have a teacher in your corner standing right behind you like, no, you're doing that wrong. You're going to have to figure it out on your own, and that's mainly it.
Okay. Micia, same question.
I think we lost Micia for a second, but we'll circle back. So
Joseph,
there we go.
you're on mute.
It's hard to not be old. one of the things that came up in our discussion on the podcast was the physical building. So I have a few ideas for that as well. But I want to preface those with with John Haiti, I believe it is, research that talks about those things that are really, really a major effect on the academic growth of the students you have in your school. And strangely enough, the building was not a major part of that. You can have a terrible building and not enough resources, but as Sanaya, is that right? Did I get her name right? As she mentioned, the teachers and several things that having to do with them. And if the staff is correct and they know what they're doing, those are much higher statistics for making sure the school is academically sound and that the kids come out of there with what they need. Is placed on that. But building is important. And so I'll give a couple suggestions, throw those out so that we can start the ball rolling. I definitely believe that there needs to be more opportunity for collaboration. And so in a lot of the schools we built boxes. We built boxes and we put each individual teacher in classroom in a box, and that's it. And the hallways are thin to try and accommodate for those size of those boxes. But there have been some innovations and some thoughts on opening up the classrooms. And so that there is more room for collaboration. And if you don't open up the classrooms, at least widen the hallways and create spaces so that different classrooms can collaborate, different teams can come together. The science teacher can come together with the math teacher and they can do a project together. Teachers can get together in general and have spaces for collaboration. And students can have spaces inside that they can now work together on project-based learning, or they can work together on various things that they're doing. So creating a space that isn't just a box that I'm in, but that's a little bit more open and fluid to allow for, and even to push the students toward collaboration. If you look at Google and Apple and all of these high-end, high-functioning companies where everybody loves to work, you'll notice that they are designed with that sort of collaboration in mind, because the company in general grows. The people there thrive better with that type of collaboration. And we have, through tradition, have sort of sectioned our students off from each other and don't give them that same concept. So that's one thing. And I'll mention one more, and then I'll let us hear from other people. I think there should be a lot more, in the perfect place for me, there would be before school care and after school care. And that would be, and I'm not, let me be clear, I'm not saying the teachers need to do that. I'm not saying the teachers should stay or come early or go. I'm saying available. There are so many problems with single parent homes, with families where both the parents are home and they work, but they're on different sides of the city and having to try and get back and forth and get students home and get children in and manage all of that. The extra cost, all that, it would be so much more convenient. But mainly for those parents and students who don't have that secondary support, can't get off work to come and grab the kids, whatever situation, or they have to be to work a little early. And you can't just drop your kid off at 7 o'clock at the door and, it's freezing outside. So to me, building that in from the beginning of the school would be something that I think would be extremely helpful to especially the demographic that we're here to kind of talk about.
Got it. Thank you so much. Micia, you're up. What we're asking and looking for is if you had a magic wand and could create the perfect school, single school, how would you use that wand to do so?
So first, I would recenter who is co-creating with me. And so it would be students and families. My background is in high school teaching, so I tend to think about young people as being able to speak and share as much as any. But when I think about younger kids, really centering their voices, there's not going to be any one model of school that's going to work for everyone. The high school I went to, we traveled from all over the city. I wish I could have gone to my neighborhood school. And so when I think about even who would build that school, it's who is it for? So first, we're going to build it from the folks who were there. And then what are we trying to do? in the world, because I think in the 21st century, most of us, I see a few of my panelists got my share of the little grays we got popping out here, right? So, right, okay. So we came up last millennium. No, okay, not you, no, not you. All right. But you know, for those of us who were trained literally last millennium, we're coming with a perspective, even if we've tried to change it over the years, where adults hold the knowledge. And in the 21st century, babies can get on a tablet and learn more than we'll ever forget. And so what we're up to in school is different. So my magic wand would center the voices of folks who we're trying to serve, but also the social and political project that we're up to, because it's no longer about the information in any subject. I'm a history teacher. I love history. I want everybody to learn everything about history. But in this day and age, depending on what we're up to in our social and political work, what history you learn is going to be different for different folks. Everyone can't learn everything. So really understanding our political and social projects, in this case, you know, science, all science to me right now would have some connection to COVID. We would not pretend, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're little or you're big, you don't have to cure it, but you can understand this current crisis through school. So really using community as text and centering the voices and needs of the community members that we want to serve.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Who is next? Sharif, I think you're next on the list.
It's always hard to go after Micia because she's so much of a soulmate of mine, and I agree 100% of, you know, what she said, and everybody I think really offered important things. I think if I'm starting a school, I'm thinking about, you know, the premise, the anti-racist premise that needs to happen, and that will inform who I hire, who, you know, how it's designed, everything. You know, I wrote a blog a long time ago to say, like, hey, you know what, even how schools are designed. I think, you know, Brother Joseph mentioned this. You know, in Philadelphia, many of the schools were designed by the same person that had a city contract to build the mental institutions.
Oh.
And so he took that framework. So it shows you right there, it wasn't student-centered. It was, oh, you know, old boys network, white folks, and just like, oh, you did that building, do another building, you know, with no concept of centering students. So I think the anti-racist just premise, every perspective, every lens, using that as a prism. This idea of centering students and student voice and leadership. You know, how, as Micia said, how do they design the school? What will they say about it? How do they give feedback to every adult, both within the school and whoever's adjacent and supports the school? I think this idea of excellent educators and, you know, like, what does it mean to be an expert, and not just content, but in human growth and development, in the experience of Black children. Educators, when I think of excellent educators, I'm thinking that they believe that their social political connection is intertwined, their own perspective as well as the students that they serve, the communities that they serve. They understand that. I agree about the history, and I think also just the history of whatever content it is, that people are also students of history with that, from a slightly different perspective. From, I understand how, I'm an engineering teacher, I understand how engineering has been used to, you know, to promote, my mom said I can't use the word white supremacy anymore. She says it's white savagery and how it's implemented. So if you're a biology teacher, that you have to know the history of how biology was used to oppress other people, you know? So all of those things is the history perspective. I think understanding, you know, so much of the future, we can't build this education based off of our own experiences. And we actually don't know, like, nobody in January, at least in my circle, you know, other people's circle, maybe, like, we did not expect to have a shutdown in March. So the education process has to, you know, primarily allow people to solve problems as they come, predict problems. You know, we don't ask. I'm going to our school, my old school's graduation tomorrow. And one of the things that they remind me, and I always joke about, is that they said, I never asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up? I asked them, what problems do you want to solve? What questions do you want to answer? And what questions do you want to ask? Then you align your education to that. If I know, hey, I want to solve that problem, then we can help you align it'll be our job as adults to create that environment and the education and the curriculum to help you with your aspirations, with your family's, aspirations. And then I think, so that's that school to activism pipeline, like Eva talked about this, black on black ed, because it was always black on black crime. Also, we think about school to prison pipeline. We have to reimagine something else, not just destroy that, but also what are we creating? So if this activism pipeline, that means they have the tools. And my favorite subjects in school, in addition to history, is writing and science. Because those are the two of the things that, like no matter what, if you understand how the world works, Micia talked about COVID and things like that. If you understand that from scientists, just have a kind of analytical brain, and trying to have a hypotheses and solve problems, you're a problem solver. And then the writing, if you're a great writer, you probably read a lot too, but you're also able to communicate in a way that's going to pierce through all the noise. So that was more than 3 things, but.
Thank you. So we're gonna kick it up to Rakim. What do you have to add to this magic that we're creating right now?
It's a lot of magic already here. My mentor, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, he always said, whoever controls the images controls your self-esteem, your self-respect, and your self-development. Whoever controls the history controls your vision, right? So I think the first thing that I would wave a magic wand and say, like, African-centered pedagogy, right? Black studies, curriculum, that Black feminist thought, like all of it in one, because I believe that with this African-centered pedagogy, you'll have an African rites of passage that teaches kids character, right, before content, right, and will move the thing forward, right? It's one thing to, have a great job in society, to be intelligent, but like, what is your character like, right? So I think in terms of history and character comes hand in hand in that African-centered pedagogy and that African rites of passage. Also, when we talk, I know a lot of you talked about student voice and choice. I would even go as far as having students help build the curriculum inside of the school, right? Not just we're building this thing together, right? Like, if a student is not like, when I'm building it, if I'm building a history lesson, the student's helping me build a history lesson. So like, definitely want to talk about voice and choice, even down to the curriculum and what are you teaching needs to be signed by students. And then when the students are building the curriculum, that curriculum, like in those 4 years of school that curriculum should be student-based, like student-centered all the way through. And the last thing I would say in terms of, in terms of the dance, arts, the piano, like our people, like before there was a written word, right? There was like oral dance and the griots, right? Like that's how they express themselves. And you think about hip hop and things of that nature, right? Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to play the piano, but in 9th grade was the only time that I got to play, right? Because the arts program was cut, right? So I only had 1 semester of piano, right? So thinking about how to take our culture and really move this thing forward. And when we talk about a super school, we're really thinking about what is the student's contribution to society, right? So that super school, as my mentor Angelo Pinto says, he said, super school will build a super community, right? That's what it should do. And that super community should feed into the school. So it's just not you're contributing to this super school, it's a cyclical process that we're moving through. So that'll be my super school, and I'll let other folks go, but those are my
Thank you.
That's how it started.
Great school so far. I want to go back and relive my childhood.
For real. So we're gonna keep kicking it back up. Chelsea, what are you gonna drop on them?
Yeah, so I'm gonna do a yes and type of situation. So especially coming so much later in answering this question, I agree with everything that's been stated. Education in school is so multifaceted, so it's going to require everything that everyone's already mentioned. I believe that education is a tool. So with that understanding, to me, with the super school, the first question almost that needs to be answered is, what is this tool being used for? And kind of just like Rakim kind of alluded to about the cyclical nature of school and community, when thinking about like the Black community in a super school, specifically meeting the needs of the Black community, it's like, what is it that we're needing? And when I think about that, I think about everything. I think about healthcare. I think about politics. I think about economics. I think about policing. I think about media. We're so fresh in building our power, and I see super schools specifically meeting the needs of our community. And so again, using the tool of education to build our community. I imagine it not working in a silo. And that silo engaging all of those sectors that I mentioned, as well as being family centered as well. So I love student voice. Like Eva said, I was like, hey, is there gonna be a student on the panel? Because that's important. I also recognize the importance of having family at the table as well. The only reason I was able to assist my students in the growth and mastery that I did when I was teaching was because of the family. Like, if I always use the imagery of like lifting this huge rock in education, it's like, the rock is all of the goals that we need to achieve, whether that's SEL, social emotional learning, if it's the academic achievement. And I always say that there's no way that I would have been able to do that alone. It took every single person that the child came in contact with to be able to help reinforce and affirm all these lessons that we were going over in school, in addition to things that I wasn't aware of in the classroom. So again, it wouldn't be a silo. We would have a community a part of this conversation, families a part of this conversation as well. I'd pull on the ethos of the approach that the Black educators use pre-integration of, again, like calling on communal learning. I love project-based learning just because of the experiences, especially, and not just kids. I think everyone learns through experience. Like, our lives are typically experiential and exposure-based. And so we wouldn't be sitting in a classroom. My personality doesn't even work well with that. So we would be up, moving all over the place. If there is a lesson to be taught, there is some place in this world where we can go, and we would go there to figure out how to understand it. And I think that helps us be able to helps the children as well as us be able to navigate together this world that all of us are creating. I don't believe that, and let me stop because I'll wrap up in a minute. But I don't believe that like schools are subjective to just these little boxes, right? One of the reasons why I left the classroom is because I was like, this makes no sense. Like, this makes why are we here? And I was like, if we're gonna do this, we can go outside. There were literally times when I would pick up my students. I was like, let's go outside because it makes what I'm about to say will make more sense out there. And so we would have a lot of being out in our environment, again, like with project-based learning. And I think what's really, really important is defining what achievement and success looks like. And I think a lot of those answers, again, comes from who it is that's present in this space. So personalizing it to each, and I don't want to call them cohorts, but like whoever is in this space with us. And yeah, I feel like the way in which that could happen will come about through the people and through who's ever in that space. And yeah. Oh, and I guess, the last part. Again, just like bridging that gap between economics and education. That's always going to be a part of it because, again, all those sectors that I mentioned before, cannot be addressed if we don't have economics, especially in this capitalistic type of society. And so, I mean, we can, as much as we want to, kind of like barter services, and, you know, hey, there's a school down the street that needs X, Y, and Z, but only to an extent will we be able to really elevate our community to the next level without economics. So really just like integrating economics in any and everything that we do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And for anyone who wants to hear more from these people, because time just seems to be flying at this point. And so anybody who wants to hear more from these folks, we have podcast episodes with all of them. Chelsea's episode is coming out tomorrow. So I just wanted to preface that for anybody who is like, I need more, there is more. And Claudine, please tell us what your magical dust would do.
Real quick before she goes, can I say something real quick before she goes?
Go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, is there a way that we could, I don't know, open things up after each person speaks so that everybody else can chime in real quick? And I don't know if that will fit the format or not, but I know there's been a couple times I've been dying to add on to like, oh, that's a great idea or great thought. And then before we move to the next person, and by the time, you know, so I don't know, you guys think about that after Claudine goes. And
Thank you.
Cool. So what is not fun is getting the wand after like 9 amazing geniuses have literally like laid out a beautiful school. But I'm gonna come in with something that may seem, you know, relatively revolutionary, but that's the spirit and the vein that we're in. So, you know, my work is solely centered around student choice, behavior, really analyzing consequences and reforming what school discipline looks like. So I love when Sharif mentioned the school to prison pipeline, because that's the path I'm about to take us down. That is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. Black students in particular, especially boys, are over suspended and being pushed out of our schools left and right. And I'm going to be as incredibly transparent as I can be. Most of that is happening at the hands of white educators, right? So we recognize that there's a disconnect between how we are seeing these students in the classroom and the impact that our perception of them has on their future outcomes. If we're constantly kicking them out, they're going to an administrator, and then they'll eventually be suspended. And then eventually we're taking them out of the place. And I wanna revolutionize that process. So right now there's this whole political movement going on talking about defund the police. I want to dismantle this school to prison pipeline. And I think what that looks like is bringing in students. So I'm gonna kind of uplift what I heard Sine say earlier. It's teaching them how to solve conflict and empowering them to be the young change agents that they are. That young lady has come up with a whole group on her school campus to make change. Don't tell me that these babies can't and won't. They will if we let them. They will if we guide them. They will if we support them. So one of the things that I'm super proud of and I've seen work is I was working at a school. It was a very well-known, nationally known charter school. And they were known for punitive discipline, right? So there's like a system where if you do something good, you get a point. If you do something bad, you lose a point. That is literally the basis of that system. I said, yeah, I'm not doing that to these Black kids. I'm not over-policing their bodies. I'm not telling them how to walk and stand and breathe and be. Nobody does this in white schools. Why? And so what we said was, moving forward, from this day forward, we're gonna commit to being restorative, and we're only gonna suspend kids for these 5 behaviors. And they were extreme. It was a fight that escalated. It was bringing a weapon. It was drugs. It was like extreme disrespect. Everything else, we said we got that. Sexual harassment was on there as well. Everything else, we were like, we're gonna handle in-house. We're not sending our kids home. We want them here. When someone messes up in your family, you don't kick them out. You don't shame them. You draw them in. You remind them who they are. You love on them, and you remind them of their values, and you teach them how they can solve that problem. So what I'm suggesting is actually building student councils that undertake some of the work. So kind of what Rakim was saying, they undertake some of the work of solving this conflict. And I've seen this work here in the school that I've had the privilege of implementing it in, where students are literally self-reporting issues through a Google form. Like, come on now, I'm talking about multi-level skills, right? So students are submitting request for a restorative practice circle through a Google form. They're identifying who they have conflict with, they're explaining what the conflict is, and then it is my responsibility, or was my responsibility, to pull students individually, have one-on-one conversations with them, prep them, and then bring them together in community to solve their own problem. I was a facilitator, I was a guide. They were responsible for solving their problems. Too often, we want to come in with this savior syndrome and save our kids from all the problems. The reality is students like Sinai don't need that. They need guidance to get there, but they have ideas about how they can make things work. And so I think putting all the power in the hands of administrators, where most of the power already lies, where policy is written, it's unfair to students. They never have a say in how they're being punished. And so again, this method would ultimately transform it, because they would be designing the consequences. Of course, they'd be approved by, you know, that group of administrators that would be responsible for this council. But when we started doing this, number one, we learned about more problems than we ever asked for. I was like, oh my God, we done opened Pandora's box. They were telling us about the drama on Snapchat and Instagram. But let me tell you what, we prevented so many fights that year because we caught it before they fought. We caught it when it was, oh, she sneak dissed my mama on my post. So this is what it takes to be in relationship with students. This is what it takes to really understand their mindset. And it's creating an open door policy where it says, no longer do you have to hide what you do from me. We're in community, we're here to build each other up. Tell me what's going on so that I can support you in solving this problem. And I think it really positions students to elevate themselves, because they realize I'm not a pawn in a chess game. I can control the outcomes here. If I choose to partake in this restorative circle, if I choose to have an open mindset, if I choose to communicate with empathy, I may be able to avoid suspension. Hold up, that's a game changer. And one of our guests mentioned parents. Parents are a part of this process. We don't circle at that level without parents. So parents are coming in. It's a whole different conversation when you're talking about, and I'm just thinking of a moment where I had a 7th grade young man who touched the butt of another 7th grade girl. Let me tell you how that young man's life was changed when he had to sit down and apologize to that young lady's father, his father, and his parents were there. They held him accountable. They were like, absolutely, you're going to apologize. And it wasn't to shame him. It wasn't to disgrace him. It was to remind him of who he was and that this wasn't in line with that. And you are going to be accountable for that. And this young man who struggled with sexual harassment from 5th through 7th grade after that circle never sexually harassed another girl on our campus again. And those are the transformative things that I think our kids need. I would also, get rid of police in schools. I would also implement anti-racist training. But I think, really putting students at the forefront of solving their own problems is going to help them to be better adults. There are so many adults now that don't know how to deal with conflict. They run and they shut down. And we see this with anxiety rates increasing, depression, and suicide. And if we can equip them with the tools early on, they're going to be so much more successful, because I'm like, oh, a conflict, I got this. I know what to do.
Yes, thank you. I think what was so beautiful about how each and every one of you answered that question was really just, it was holistic. You piggybacked off each other. You kind of used what, I would have said that, but then this is how I would go further. And so it was just so beautiful to see it come together with a group of people who have never sat down and had a conversation with each other. So I absolutely love that. And so we are, again, like I said, this grandfather club just really, It's 8 o'clock. There'll be 8 of those. What? Now I completely lost my train of thought. Oh my goodness. So time has just literally flown. And so we only have 30 minutes left, and we want to give people the opportunity to ask questions. And so I think we want to go round robin to everybody and kind of give one thing to, whether they're teachers, parents, students on this call right now, give one thing actionable that they can do to start creating this change in their schools. And we mean it, one thing. So we won't make you go last again, Claudine. We'll go back the other way.
This is that awkward moment where I was honestly zoned out. What's the question?
This is reality, people. I love it. No, so we're asking you to give one thing to everyone who's on this call that they can take from here on out. Although we can't make our magic wands right now. we want to make sure that folks know where we're going in the future.
And if people in the chat want to also, based on everything that they've heard, answer this very same question, we would love to hear from you guys as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say, don't hesitate to take action. I don't care if you volunteer at the school. I don't care if you have an after school program, if you're a teacher, if you're the assistant principal, if you're the principal, don't hesitate to take action. As an administrator myself, if somebody came to me with a great idea and they had the willpower and the plan to get it done, I was going to empower them. I was going to encourage them. So don't wait to propose something that you know can impact your school. I went to one restorative practice training and I came back and I was like, yo, we're doing this. And literally that sparked an entire transformation of my school. And I think, you know, shout out to my school leader at the time for having the foresight to say, hey, this is a thing we should learn more about. But it was really me going back and saying, I think we need to do this, that pushed the envelope. So just don't ever doubt your voice and the power that you have.
Love it. Oh, so we're going back down. Who was next? Chelsea?
You're like me.
Yeah, I think so.
So Claudine, I appreciate your vulnerability because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, dang, I definitely just zoned out for a quick second. No, so I think that no matter what role you're in, I think one of the most important questions that you can ask is like a need-based question. So the question would just be somewhere along the lines of, I know this is what I'm here for, but like, how is it that I could better meet the need in which whatever it is that you're serving that person or people in. So if it's as an administrator, and allowing whoever it is that you're touching to answer the question for you, rather than guiding that question, keeping it as open-ended as possible, because I think that would allow for more personalized approaches to meeting whatever it is that, again, like I said, you're missing in whatever your role is. And I'm trying to be as broad as possible to keep in mind like all the different types of roles that we have in our school communities. But yeah, like what is it that what more do you need from me? What is it that you feel like we can improve upon? How would your job be better? Just like something need-based to kind of, to enhance the educational experience and just like school community in general. And I also want to do like a quick little plug also. Eva and I are doing a school conference for Black educators or Black teachers, as well as anyone who touches Black students. And so we'll have more information hopefully going out about that. Maybe we can like connect it to this group of people. Yeah, that'd be great, cool. And just hope to see you all there, and as well as passing it along to other educators that you know. We're going to be talking about several different topics, from SEL to, again, my favorite, finances and economics, as well as just like how we can better serve and show up for our Black students. We are creating this space just because we know that Black children have specific problems that need to be addressed in this education space. And so we want to have direct, specific conversations about Black children and how we can better serve them. So we'll have panels and presenters, student voice will be there as well. So hopefully you all can come and join us. It's gonna be virtual at the end of the summer, right around the time where we're going back to school, so.
And for any panelists who have not been, who haven't heard the request about the conference just yet, it's just because my email, the way it's set up, like it just, but it's coming, it's coming.
Rakim, you are next.
I'm next. Oh man. So, the one thing I would say, is to use your voice and give them help. And this is why, right? If you're at any point of the school building, your voice is the most important thing that you can do, right? And Audre Lorde says your silence will not protect you, right? And I think it's true, right? If you're an administrator at the school, right? If you're admin principal, then and you don't have resources, you need to give the board help. You need to speak up. Like you need to no, we're not cutting budgets for teachers in this school. No, we're not, right? And you need to do that. If you're a teacher and you see injustice happening in your school, whether it's the discipline practices, whether it's the curriculum, whether the, you know, whatever it is, like it is your job to speak up and build coalitions within inside the school building so that you can be the change that you want to see, literally, right? Like, and I say this, right? We're all called to speak up and be like abolitionists, right? And I say this, right? When folks are trying to get free from the plantation, or I actually call it the plantation, the school of prison pipeline, because that's where it started. That's where folks are first started to be educated and taught how to be Black, what it meant to be Black and white in this country, right? Right? You would not, like, when's the last time you've heard of a famous overseer that stayed with the system, right? Like, so we're called to be abolitionists. We're called to move the system forward, right? Until we get to super school, you are all going back to places that is not that correct, right? So I'm saying, I'll tell teachers like, yo, if you don't protest with the students and the teachers and you're in your classroom, I don't want to see you out in the street with me. I don't want to see you marching with me. Why? Because you didn't even do it in the school when you know that kid shouldn't have got suspended. You know that kid should have been sent to the dean's office. You know that curriculum was whack. Like you knew that, right? But you didn't say anything, right? So I think the number one tool that you have is your voice, your agency, build coalitions and move forward. Move forward. Coalitions with students, coalition with teachers, and move forward. If you have to move forward against the admin, you move against them, right? If you're part of the admin, if you have to move against the board, you move against them, because everything that we do is going to be in the service of students, and that's who I work for. I work for students. I do not work for the admin. I work for students, and that's what we need to do. Whatever it takes type of mentality. That is my.
Love it. I love it. We're working our way back. Sharif, you're up next.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Rakim. Amalu, root word Amal is putting in that work. That's what that, so beautiful. Yeah, I think that was a really strong statement. This reminds me of Jawanza Kunjufu years ago said, if your child goes to a school in a capitalistic society, but they're not teaching them about capitalism and all the traps of it and how it's was basically created on the backs and blood of Black children. If our children are going to schools and not being made aware of that, then that, right from the beginning, where, what they really think about the child's education and the community's, galvanization, right? And so I think that coupled with that, schools, one message is there should be something in the school, and not just long-term, something in the schools that help children save money and make money, right? And so I visit schools and they have this, all these, what do they call it? The schools where they're doing CTE, right? They're doing career and technology education, but it's not coupled with how to write a business plan. Right. And so you go there, and we know that Black kids are shut out of union. So like, that means if they're going to pursue that mechanic job, that means they have to do it on their own, and they're not equipped with those tools. Right. And so that piece has to be a part of it. Right. Save money, make money while I'm in school. If I go right in, even if it's just like, hey, I know basic electrical skills. I have those. I don't have to call an electrician. I have basic mechanic skills. I don't have to call that. I know about my taxes. I know about all of that. That can be something that you go through school and learn. And by the end, you have these skills where you're not calling and all these other people to, to take money out, particularly if we know the generation of wealth gap. And then I would say the message to the families would be, when your child is born and every year after that, create a plan of your aspirations for your child. When they get old enough, then they should be informing that. When you go to school from kindergarten and every time after that, every time you go into a school, bring that binder with you and let them know, instead of just listening to their policies and procedures at back to school night report card, all of that, show up and say, I'm giving you feedback. I told you about my aspirations for my child, their aspirations, and I'm going to give you feedback about how you're helping them get there. right? So don't just go in there and listen to them. They should be listening to you every time you step into that school.
I love that.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Micia, you got the short end of the stick this time because they.
Oh no. Oh, I got, it's
She's
good.
like, I got plenty more.
It's good. No, it's good. I'm grateful. I was like, and that.
Mhm.
You know, I would say, bring people with you. Whatever it is you're doing, don't do it alone. And so the individualism that we've been taught through dominant culture is part of what the problem is, right? So we're taught about our great leaders in history. We're not taught about the people. So make sure you're not whatever you're doing, make sure you're not doing it alone. And, you know, understand your status as a gatekeeper. I was talking to a group of high school seniors last week, and I said, if you have to be online for your first year of college, everyone in your household gets a free year of college.
Wow.
I need the Zoom on speaker. I need everybody getting those lessons. And so just recognizing where you have the opportunity to open the gate so that other folks can receive and can inform. And then just echoing this idea of who's driving, who's at the center. So if you have the opportunity to open the gate so that young people, so that families can be heard, use your platform to be able to do that.
Oh, short and sweet and incredible. I love it. Sanai Clark, we're calling you in to kind of round us out because we're doing Q&A after this.
No,
I forgot Joseph. Joseph, I was kidding. Completely kidding. Joseph is gonna go, and then you're gonna go, Sanai.
I guess a few of the points that I think that we can take and implement immediately and try to create our schools be more to be closer to a super school. It seemed like everybody really, in their own way, talked about students having a voice, and so I think each of us can go back, and that's something we can immediately implement. How can we, in our schools, in our classrooms, and in our sphere, find ways to hear what the students have to say and what their view are? I mean, we even talked about at one point them designing the curriculum. So I think that was something that almost everybody spoke to. So everybody listening, all the teachers that are here, all of us, we can go back and find ways to make that happen. I also like the discussion about restorative practice. That concept doesn't cost anything as well. That's something that can quickly be implemented, that can enhance your institution, that can stop the prison, the pipeline to prison, so that so many of us talked about and mentioned. That's something else that can immediately be implemented without cost and can have huge ramifications for your entire school. And then if your school is successful with it, then that may trickle down to the other schools in your district. And the next thing you know, you've impacted thousands of children at zero cost, really. So that's something else we talked about that I think is actionable that we can take back. And personally, I love what Sharif shared. I'm going to be telling my kids, I'm not going to be asking them what they want to become anymore. I'm going to be asking them what problem do they want to solve. I love the wording of that. So I was just trying to think of things that.
Those are just a warning. My kids, my biological kids are annoyed every time I ask that because I always they're like, oh, here we go. Like I'm like, yeah, tomorrow that's what we're talking about over breakfast, you know. So
well, if that's the case, my kids are annoyed with the growth mindset. They're sick of hearing about growth mindset. So those are just some things. We talked about other things. Some of those are more challenging and would take more economics, more finances. They would take more, but those things I think every last one of us can go back and see how much of that we can get done, and then affect change this coming school year.
There were a lot of things that Eva was tired of hearing about, but you know, I think we can tell some of it worked.
Oh man, and so I don't know how I missed you on the list. I have it right here, but I'm so glad you got that in because it was necessary and incredibly important to add. And so now, Sanai, please round us out with what you want folks to know, especially from a student's perspective.
I would say just listen to your students. Don't make them think that they're small or that their voices don't matter or that they don't know what they're talking about just because they're a kid. It's not fun to be told that you're crazy, and it's not fun to be told that you can't change the world, because you can.
No, I might
And you just have to have a push to get there. And if your teachers are supposed to be there to help you and to guide you, but if they're not doing that, then you can't, then how can they expect you to be able to go out in the world and do real stuff and be able to actually change the world? So I just say listen to them.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Sanai. And so, like I said, I don't understand how an hour and 15 minutes went by so incredibly quickly. We got so much jam-packed in that time. So we want to give folks the next 10 minutes to ask questions. You can put it in the chat, or you can come off of mute and show yourself so folks can see you. But any questions for individual panelists, that would be incredible, so that we can kind of maximize this 10 minutes. Anybody have a question?
Everybody was so clear.
Mm-hmm.
I do, but I didn't want to. I wanted to give everybody else a chance, so I'll still wait and make sure nobody else has one.
Well, go ahead. Nothing's come up in the chat yet. Go ahead, Joseph.
Okay, my question was for Claudine, really, and I wanted to know a little bit more details about how she instituted the restorative practices at her school. What did she do in that when she came back? The beginning phases of that. What would the first 2 or 3 steps look like?
Yeah, good question.
That is a good question. So I think the first thing was honestly planning. You know, I'm a big believer in backwards planning. And so I really had to sit down and think about, okay, where are we now as a school? Where do we want to be in 3 years? And then actually make a 3-year plan. So it's not fun, it's not that cute, but it is so important, because you need to be able to think about the milestones that will tell you that you're on track. Like, how do I know if my school is becoming more restorative? We can use the lingo, we can use the language, but if we're still being overtly punitive to kids, if we're still looking to punish versus restore, then we're not really getting there. So the first step was, like I said, laying out a plan. The second step was then getting feedback on the plan. I have no business creating anything in a silo. I am a champion of collaboration. And so that did not mean my own administrative team. Like, y'all starts are great, but I want to go to the front lines of the people who are going to be implementing this. So I talked with teachers, I talked with students, I talked with parents. I really made sure that I listened to the voices that mattered most and that would be impacted most by this work. And then I even did an analysis of the investment of my staff, right? So we had, at the time, we were serving 5th through 8th graders, maybe like 40 to 50 staff members, and I plotted them on a continuum, right? So who are gonna be my eager beavers? Who are gonna be the folks that are literally already restorative? They do it. They may not have realized, some of them did realize and they were aware, but who are the folks who do this naturally? Then it was like, who are the folks that would adopt this as soon as they see it is effective, or as soon as they see those experts kind of doing it? And I even had to identify, okay, who are going to be my naysayers? Who is going to drag their feet, kick, dig their heels in the sand and be like, I don't want to do this because the old way is comfortable, right? I'm in the deep South, y'all. Respectability politics is real here. We have lots of interesting points of views on how kids are supposed to behave, talk, present themselves to adults. And so I'm introducing this entire concept where I'm saying their voice is just as important as yours. And for some teachers, that was hard, right? They were brought up and accustomed to this notion that you're a child, you stay in a child's place. And I had to make it very clear, that's not the direction that we're going in. And so if that's the business you're about, then you may want to find new business, because this is the school we're going to continue to build and create. Luckily, I was really fortunate, and I have to be transparent. Like, the staff I had was amazing, and they were all on board, though I may have had some that were in that like farther end of the spectrum who might be hesitant. I knew that there were ways to get everyone on board. And then I started being strategic. So I went to my experts and I said, let's build a coalition in the school. Let's collaborate. And so we created a restorative team. So again, it's not just me, it's stakeholders pushing out this new way of thinking. And even with the folks who are hesitant, I made time to engage with them one-on-one through relationship and ask, like, why are you opposed to this thing? Help me understand. What would make you feel more comfortable? And so by doing those 3 steps initially, planning, getting feedback, and then identifying on a continuum where my staff fell in relation to their ability to transition to this type of change, I think it set us up for success. I hope that answered your question.
I think Joseph, it did answer your question. So we got a bunch of questions, and we only got 5 minutes. And I think what we'll wind up doing is we'll take the rest of these questions and ask our panelists after the fact, and then throw it up on the Black on Black Education IG. We'll do some smaller question segments to to make sure we get everything answered.
But if you want to hear the answers to a lot of these questions in a larger and a more magnitude, then make sure you follow us. Conference coming soon.
An interesting question here that we didn't necessarily touch on anything that relates to this was unlearning. So what do you have to unlearn from your schooling experience, and how will your vision of a super school prevent students from learning those things? Micia, why don't you give a shot at that?
I was reading the chat one more time.
What do you have to unlearn from your schooling experience, and how will your vision of a super school prevent students from learning those things?
Real talk. First of all, if we're sitting here, we have learned how to navigate an inequitable system that was never set up or designed for us. Mm-hmm. Particularly as Black folks, what we need to unlearn is Eurocentric dominant culture ways of being, because even if you grew up at a household that didn't hold that, you had to figure out how to be successful in a system that valued that. And so the code switching that we're called to do can make us dehumanize not only ourselves, but our students if they don't comply. And so part of that unlearning is the unlearning of the disconnection from our humanity. So we have to put ourselves in places where, as a loud, ready talker, I need to be quiet. I need to put myself in a place where I learn to affirm who I am, not because someone else tells me. So if Black people tell me Black is beautiful, that's wonderful, but I have to believe that Black is beautiful no matter if nobody tells me that. So that unlearning is not part of that unlearning is about depending on other people's affirmation for your success. And then the last thing I'll say is the individualism that I brought up last time. If COVID is teaching us nothing else, it is that it is not about you. You can be asymptomatic and spread it to somebody else. So stop worrying just about yourself. Think about those around you. And because our school is set up where we get individual grades, individual diplomas, we have to unlearn that individual consciousness.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And we can only take one more question. We're going to take one from Dondre East, and because we've talked a lot about teachers and students, and not as much about parents. So for anyone on the panel, do you believe that parents should be required to be educated on a continual basis to keep their perceptions fresh?
I'll just say really quickly, I don't like requiring things of people. I think that it's important to have that understanding of like why we are all here. And I think naturally certain pieces will come after that. So if we all understand that the reason we are here is to use education as a tool to uplift our community, if that is the ethos of the environment, then that is going to require, and not require in a sense of like it's mandatory, but it's going to require us to do certain things. And so whatever it is that we need to be doing to ensure that that is carried out will just be necessary. I feel like within that ethos and the culture of what we create, people will understand, okay, I need to do this so that we can do X, Y, and Z. And just like Micia said, the collaboration, and another word that I just like to kind of synthesize all that is just Ubuntu, understanding that I am because of who we are. And so like, if I understand that I need to learn this over here in order for the greater community to be able to uplift ourselves in a certain way, then that is just what will happen. And I think it's more important to focus on having that ethos and having that culture and climate versus like saying this is required arbitrarily for what reason.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, panel. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I am, just heartened. When I hear you guys talk, it inspires me and it makes me believe that we can, not just create a super school, but we can create a super system. You know, the ideas are there. The incredible voices are there. If I had to sum this whole entire Zoom meeting up in one word, it would be connected. And so I'm going to leave here feeling, you know, more connected to each and every one of you. I'm going to leave here, you know, more connected to the idea of a family-centered education, one with communal learning, one where we connect with students in order to create the type of curriculum that's going to lead our students into the future. We got a whole bunch of tweetables that we're going to be able to share and connect around those ideas. We don't want this conversation to end here. We want to see you guys in the chat on Black education, like engaging with us on how you certainly can't have this. We did the best we can in an hour and a half, but that everything that was stated, like we can dig into so much more. And I sincerely hope that, you know, that we're building a network of people here that are going to have a willingness to dig in and engage with us. And, you know, I just want to thank my daughter for inviting me in to the idea of Black on Black education. You know, I've never been more inspired. So I'll leave it for her to close things out.
My sentiments exactly. Thank you guys so much for being here, for donating your time, and then for using your time to work in service of Black students. I think my education experience taught me that it was okay to push aside the needs of Black students. It was okay to say that feeling that you got when someone said that slavery isn't real, or that we should just get over it in a classroom, that feeling was okay. And we were allowed to kind of push that aside. And I think having so many people want to be a part of a conversation like this is starting to recreate that narrative. And so I am so grateful and so thankful for all of you for being here, sticking out with us for an hour and a half on a Wednesday night. You could have been doing anything else. So I very, very much appreciate it. And I think I just want to close by a few asks for you guys. I want to ask that when the information for our conference comes out, you guys join us, because this conversation, like we said, cannot happen in an hour and a half. It needs much more time. And so we want to create a space for much more time, but the space only happens when people want to join it. So we hope that you do that. And also, tell your friends about what we're doing at Black on Black Education. We will be sending out an email. I know a lot of people in the chat are asking questions about the other panelists. In the email, you will get a recording of this so that you can send to folks. You will also get the contact information for each of the panelists, and you will get the information on Black Education so that you can stay connected with us, you can reach out to us, and we can continue to cultivate a curriculum, an idea, and honestly just a passion and a drive to continually serve Black students so that all students are treated better. So yes, thank you guys so much.
And since we do have like 2 minutes, if everybody else, if you guys want to quickly give your contact information now, so just while people are on, please do so, or add it into the chat.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, folks.
We did it, and we're out. Cut.
You're amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Seriously. Proud of you, Eva. This was dope.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
We'll be reaching out to all the panelists, if not directly after this tomorrow morning. So to personally thank you guys again. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Have a great rest of your night.
Take care.
So it saves the whole chat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you all so much for doing this.
Of course, thank you so much for being here.
It's awesome.
Bye, everybody.
See y'all.
See ya. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Yes.
I was just getting all the IGs, if y'all don't mind me.
Oh yeah, no worries. Take your time.
Thank you so much. It was very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
See you later,
Sinai.
Sinai.
Thank you. she was out. She was like, gotta go. Got to go. All right.
All right, I'm good.
All right, amazing. All right, bye everybody.
Thank you.